Hi. If you are at a place in your journey of self-development in which you can see the story and the narrative that has pulled you into it as being a piece of your identity or your whole identity, and you are now also objective enough to see a new truth. So there's this story, and then there's this energetic, vibrational embodiment that you are on the road to, and you can see both. And the resistance that comes up for a lot of people at this phase, that's what I want to talk about, because the way that somebody was asking me, like, what do I do about this? You know, this, like, everybody wants to know, what do I do? What do I do? And I actually heard a really amazing, sorry, I'm getting a call. I heard a really amazing thing from Abraham Hicks this morning. She said, no amount of action can compensate for misalignment. And so many people come to me like, yeah, I get it energetically, Stace, but what do I do about it? And I'm like, interesting. I mean, if you really got it energetically, you would know what to do about it, because the energetics would demonstrate to you. And most of the time there's nothing to do about it. It's just expand into that new space that you're going into. But the place where our old identity, and please go take soul centering after toxic shame, because I'm giving away a little bit of information here that's probably in there, but and it would just be helpful, you know, for you and for me. But that place where you get to, where the identity that you've wrapped yourself around, that has been the blanket for you, becomes a story. And then you're like slapped awake and you go, oh my God, if I don't want that to be my story, I actually have to change my identity. And there's going to be a phase, and I see it like this river of rocks that sometimes we go to, and there's all these spiders that come up, and you have to kind of like leverage yourself on these rocks as you walk across this river of rocks. And that's when this person was kind of like, what do I do about this? In this very dense resistance of being able to see but not do, because she's still in the old story that doing is the thing that moves you forward. And this resistance that came up, I said, it's like, for me in this phase, it was like, and this is what it's like for her, I think, like you're trying to balance on two different rocks. And one's the old story, and one's the new vibrational story that you are on the road to, that is very confrontational to your old story, because it doesn't bring all of that, all of those hooks and all of those that baggage that you wrapped you wrapped yourself up, and we would call that your ego. We would call that your identity, right? And when you're shifting out of an identity into a new vibrational alignment that's more in tune with who you are as a being, it's very defaulty to want to go back to your old story. And when you can see both, the goal is not, because she kept saying, how do I feel good here? Good is not the goal when you're on two rocks like that, right? Balance is the goal. Mindfulness is the goal. Going slowly, seeing, feeling your feet is the goal, right? So very much wanting some heady, okay, like, how do I feel good? What's the answer here? When you're between two places where your old identity is literally like going to die, and you're on watch while that happens, and you're like, okay, well, I kind of have to, all of your abandonment things come up that you usually have for other people, and your betrayal stories that you normally would reserve for other people, they're going on inside you, because you're like, wait, if I leave that behind, who am I? What's my story? There's no facts. There's no, like, does that mean I made that whole thing up? Yes, that's exactly what it means. And that's so liberating, and it's also infuriating, because you're like, oh my God, a lot of people I work with are in their 60s. They're like, how the hell did I just come to realize that I've made this up, right? I'm not saying that you've made up your trauma. I'm not saying that you've made up the story of your life, but as an internal creator, by all means, you've created the story to keep yourself comfortable within it, right? And when we can see a new story, it's very uncomfortable, because it's contrast to our old story. And if you're attracted to my channel, you're probably very much, you are aware of extreme contrast a lot. And that might be the tightrope that we walk, right? Because it's like, I want all of this. Oh my God, I have all this. How could I even want more, right? This contrast that goes on in the mind. So when you're on those rocks and you're seeing the old identity and you're also standing on this new vibrational truth, the goal is not, let me dance in my joy in that very moment. Like, there are different rhythms for different chapters and different times of life. And when you're there in that moment, the goal is not to feel good. The goal is to be present, to balance, to find a way to balance and just be where you actually are, instead of trying to jump to that other rock and get there when that's not actually, you're not super ready to be there because you haven't seen the old story long enough to actually go, okay, I'm gonna leave it. Because when you've seen it long enough, you'll inevitably leave it, right? When you've looked at it long enough and you go, okay, like, I get it. I can objectively see it from distance enough that I can kind of let it fade into the background, and then I can move on to this new rock. But if you're standing there seeing both are what you're supposed to be seeing right now. Both are what you're ready for right now. So the goal is, in that space, is not to feel good. Sorry to say that. The goal is, when you're seeing these two wobbly spaces within yourself and you're wanting to get to the next one, it's to be mindful and to find centering and balance on the two things that you are actually seeing. And when you energetically get what you're seeing, you'll know what the next thing to do is, if anything. And sometimes that to-do list could look like, sit with this for a year. Don't do anything. Learn to live a life in which you feel like you don't have to do anything, right? I don't know, and it might be go run a marathon. I don't know what your to-do would be, but it might not be what you think that it is, right? So again, this work is not for the faint of heart because it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. And some phases are the best in that you learn comfort probably for the first time in your life. And then there's other phases where you go, oh, this is a discomfort I'm actually not familiar with, and I'd prefer not to have it. And then you just give birth to yourself as a result of that discomfort, right? So the goal is not always to feel good when you're on the path to feeling good. Sometimes you really do just have to learn to feel where you're at and call in mindfulness and call in sensualization rather than visualization. To be where you are as a creator. I think most of us just keep trying to catch up with ourselves. And that's not even, we're not even on the right trajectory, right? We're trying to catch up with ourselves in some version that we think we should be, instead of reining it in and being sensual with ourselves rather than visualizing a separate self to become. We become within our own time-space reality, which in this particular case will feel like the only thing that you can do in that moment is balance and slowly tip the scales to a new leverage point closer to where you want to go. But the story doesn't die easy. It doesn't die with ease. It's not comfortable to be its hospice nurse, because that's what you are. So don't expect that part to be comfortable, because it's just not. I hope this makes sense for you. Bye.